My name's Kelz. I am an artist. I am also an educator. So I paint, I draw. I say I'm a values-based or values-driven artist. So everything that I do is bringing awareness to different like social justice issues, or it's like processing the things that like I go through. So, like heartbreak or anxiety or just anything that I'm going through to connect with other people and bring, I don't know, like some of those things to the surface. And then I educate. So like some of the education is with art. I'm also a social worker, so I combine kind of those things into like art experiences where folks can use art to heal, to bond, to explore different parts of their identity, to speak for themselves the way that my art speaks as well, so they can choose whatever they want to speak about. And then I'm also an educator as far as I travel and go to different conferences. I do training on queer topics and polyamory and kink, specifically just like basics of those things, but then also in the healthcare setting, because I think that that's really important.
So you gave a lot there, and it's a lot to unpack. So let's back up a little bit. You mentioned that you are an artist. Artist is a very broad term. So let's dive into that. Let's be a little bit more specific. What is the type of art that you are involved in?
Yeah, so my art is all like values based and social justice driven. And it's really eclectic as far as like the media is concerned. So I do a lot of watercolor, acrylics, mix in some ink, some markers, some watercolor pencil. I mean, just really a lot of different things. I also do a lot of printmaking. So like carving into rubber, and then I don't know if you can see that very well. And then I love to embellish them. So I used this as the base for this, and that's really fun. Yeah, and then like I've sewn things on my pieces of art. Like I just kind of like let it speak and do what I want to do as it goes.
And then also you mentioned that you're an educator and that you help people by using art. So let's talk about that a little bit more. If you can just kind of describe why you decided that was something that you wanted to do, and then if you could also kind of just talk about how it can be beneficial to others.
Yeah, so like art in my life has been really important. I noticed that at different times in my life when I'm not creating, I'm really struggling. I could be going through something really tough, but if I'm still creating through that, it's like my outlet. It's my therapy. And so as I noticed that, I wanted to like bring those experiences to other people. So yeah, so I would like organize different things. So I've done like healing experiences where you can, one of them was like letting go. And so for some people, that might be grief. Some people, it might be loss. It might be letting go of certain feelings or anxiety. And what does that look like? What does letting go look like? And how are you going to visualize that? Because a lot of the time, like feelings are really abstract. And so being able to visualize that, and it doesn't have to be like a thing, it could be colors, it can be shapes, but I feel like putting visual to our feelings or what we're going through can be really healing and beautiful. So I create these spaces for people to just really be authentic and free and powerful to be themselves and express what they need to express. I create a lot of semi-structured art experiences or art projects for people. So it's semi-structured because I'll like give them all the same materials, but then, and kind of give some direction, but then their piece is going to be completely different than everybody else's. It's not like the parties where you go and you make the exact same thing. It's like really about you and what you're going through. Yeah. Then I've done like things like Art Speaks. And so in that one, I talk about different movements within social justice that people have used art to make impact. One of the ones that I do a lot about is the queer movement. So with Keith Haring and ACT UP and a whole bunch of other artists, and how the art oftentimes reflected the times and reflected the issues. It made people be aware of it. It also built community and made people feel like they're not alone. And it also like challenges the norms and sometimes like brings those issues forward. And so, yeah, so like I will teach about that. And then each person gets to make a piece that speaks for what they want to say in that time and in like a certain style that I choose. And usually it's a style of an artist who has done those things. So I'll do like identity-based art experiences. So for instance, maybe like exploring your gender or your sexuality. What does that look like and what does that mean? So I remember one time that I led this experience and a lot of people were able to really reflect on like, what is my gender? What does that mean for me in this society? And they made these like beautiful pieces. But there were also people who were in there and they were like, I've literally never thought of this before. And so they would be like, oh, I'm a cis man and that means to me football and grilling. And so then, we would talk about like, well, can cis women or trans men or can they watch football and grill? Like, is that something that sets you apart as a man? And it was just like, wow, I've never thought of these things. And something that I noticed was that a lot of trans and non-binary people like about that a lot, And so it was a lot easier for them to do that. And I think at the end of that experience, like the cis folks were just like, I never realized that. I have never thought about that. And that's exactly what privilege is, right? Like you don't have to think about it. It's the societal norm. And so they didn't leave with a finished art project, but they loved it. And they came back the next time because it's not necessarily all about the art, but it's about that process. I do like mindfulness art experiences too. So like that one's like super about the process. So we talk about like breath work while you're doing different paint strokes and being fully present and not judging what you're making. We're not very mindful in our day-to-day life. And so trying to like take just this one moment in time and be like really, really mindful is powerful. Art can show up differently for different people. And for me, it's important that I'm expressing things that really resonate with me, and different things going on in this world really like take up a lot of my thought space. And so like being able to feel like I'm doing some advocacy, I'm doing some awareness through my art, because art has always been radical. Art has always been liberatory. And I think like using it very specifically for those purposes is really powerful. So yeah, so for me, a lot of my art is very specific to certain movements, certain topics that are important like today and now. So one of the prints that I've made is Silence Equals Death, which is something that the ACT UP movement in New York used in the early 90s at the height of the AIDS epidemic. And it was basically saying, like, if you're silent, you're killing people. Audre Lorde says, silence will not protect you. Silence isn't going to protect any of us. And that dialectic is that, like, sometimes we need to be silent for our safety. So those people who have some privilege to be able to speak up, which I feel I do in certain spaces, it's so important that we speak up. And I feel like my art is a way that I can speak up.
This project that I'm working on is to bring awareness to those who struggle with anxiety and how art can be therapy for that. But can we kind of like lean into, some of your struggles with anxiety and how you found art and how it's been beneficial for you?
In general, I just tend to have some anxiety in certain situations. I think a lot of that anxiety started when I was younger in a white supremacist culture, and where things like perfectionism are like really important and like held really high. And so in my family, like being perfect, doing the perfect thing was really important. And I also was doing like a lot of masking of my ADHD. And so that like created a lot of anxiety in my body of just like, I have to be perfect or else, right? And on top of that, I was like in the closet. So like holding so many things in and masking and just trying to navigate our society, I think is really difficult. And so that's kind of where it started. And art was kind of the place where I could go and get away from all of that. So, it was hard. I'm much better at it now, but it's been very hard to like fall asleep because all I do is think and I replay all of the conversations that I had and how I should have said this instead of this in my head. And art kind of let me get out of that rumination. I can like get super hyper focused on the art and it feels so freeing. Yeah. And then as I grew up, that social anxiety seemed to be more and more rather than just like generalized. And, people often think like people who have social anxiety are just like, don't come out of their house. They don't talk to people. They're like in the corner crying. And I have been like on the floor crying before for my anxiety, but like in general, that's not my life. I feel like it shows up where I'm like, when I'm going to a place for the first time, I really would appreciate somebody coming with me or knowing somebody there. It's very hard for me to go places, even if I don't know like how to park or where to go. Sometimes that'll like cause me to be like, oh, I'm sick. I can't come, just because of like all of those like anxieties. And I don't know, that's hard. And then people stop inviting you to things and then you have more anxiety because you also have some of that rejection sensitivity as well. And it just is like a cycle that just builds on top of each other. So it's really hard sometimes. I am an exhibiting artist, so I exhibit in different galleries, and sometimes I go to like the opening receptions by myself, and that feels so scary. Sometimes I'll go in and just say hi, take a picture with my art, talk to like the curator or whatever, and then I don't know anybody else. And so 10 minutes later, I'm like, peace out, because I don't like it. But then other times, like I can go and I can know like 20 different artists there and I can have deep conversations. I don't like chit-chatting about the weather and stuff like that. So I think that's why I don't like going to places. But yeah, I'll have these deep conversations about people. We can look at the different art pieces and like talk about what inspired you. And I love doing that because my pieces are inspired by like so many like very in-depth things, whether it is in a social justice issue that's happening right now, or it was like something I was going through. Like when I got divorced, I started painting a lot about what that felt like in my body. And that really helped. And then when I would show those pieces, people would be like, wow, what does this represent? And I'm like, oh, the pain that I felt through my divorce, but maybe there's like a flower growing out of a heart. And so, like, this idea that there's like hope and beauty that can come out of pain. So, yeah, anxiety sucks, but there's hope for us.
You mentioned that you exhibit your art, what it is, what pieces you have there. I don't know if you have one or if it's a complete gallery or whatever. Just kind of talk about.
This exhibit is really cool. I've exhibited in this space a few times now, and I absolutely love it. It's at basically a community hub in Southwest Detroit called Vamanos. And a whole bunch of artists are part of this exhibit, which I absolutely love because we all get to come together with our friends and people who follow our art. And then all those people get to see so many different wonderful artists' creations. And so I have 3 pieces in this exhibit. All of them are watercolor based, but they're mixed media. So there's some other like ink or marker or whatever incorporated into those pieces. And one of them is about mental health and kind of that idea that it's called We're All a Little Mad Here from Alice in Wonderland. And it is bringing awareness to like the madness movement and how like our brains like all just work different. And just because you're mad doesn't mean that you're worthy of less dignity and respect. The other one's called Expansive Vision, and it is specifically about psilocybin. And I'm kind of leaning into psychedelic assisted therapy and how psychedelics and psilocybin can really expand the possibilities in your brain. A lot of the time we get stuck in ruts. And this is what we know, and this is how we deal with things. And there is beauty in being able to expand your mind and see things from a different perspective, or just realize like, oh, what I've been doing has like actually not been helpful for me, and I can do this thing, and it can be really, really powerful. So that's what that one's about. And the third piece is called Both And. I think living in the space of both and being able to hold 2 things that might feel antithetical, they might feel like they go against each other, but they can exist at the same time, I think is really important. It's an important skill to learn. A lot of us in general, and a lot of us with anxiety, oftentimes have black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking, and that doesn't often serve us very well. And so kind of reframing and being like, actually these can exist together, and it's a both and it doesn't take anything away from one or the other. I can be going through a really tough time, and today I can experience joy. My daughter would be mad at me if I didn't mention that she did a few of the like designs in the both and piece. And my daughter's a really big force in my life, and you can see that throughout my art. Sometimes she is the object of the art, and sometimes just who she is and how she's changed my life is kind of seen or inspired through the art. So yeah, so she did a few of these zigzag lines and all of that.
Thank you for listening. To find out more about Kelz, go to their website, www.kelzcreates.com. This is just the beginning. Follow for more.